And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the tenth of your seed and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your donkeys, and put them to his work. And he will take the tenth of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants, and ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye have chosen, which ye shall have chosen you. And God as a noun and verb will not hear you in that day. Well, God hears, but there's a difference between hearing to do whatever you want and the opposite. Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel, and they said, "Nay, but we will have a king over us, that we also may be like all the nations, and that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles." And after Muhammad, that happened too, is that they were told, choose a leader from among yourselves to stay involved in it as a community. And then they got conquered by kings and then colonial powers and all sorts of stuff because they, didn't stick together. And they allowed monarchies to slip in. And Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he rehearsed them in the ears of God as a noun and verb. And God as a noun and verb said unto Samuel, Hearken unto their voice, and make them a king. And Samuel said unto the men of Israel, Go ye every man unto his city. Now there was a man, a Benjamin, whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bechorath, the son of Aphiah, a Benjamite, a mighty man of power, and he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man, and a goodly, and there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upward, he was higher than any of the people. And the donkeys of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. And Kish said to his son, Take now one of these servants with thee, and arise and go seek the donkeys. And he passed through Mount Ephraim, and passed through the land of Shalisha. But they found them not. Then they passed through the land of Shalom, and there were not, and he passed through the land of the Benjamites. But they found them not. And when they were come into the land of Zuph, sometimes that's a TZ sound, or sometimes there's substitution altogether, and you don't know why in the world they did that. But Saul said to a servant that was with him, Come, and let us return, lest my father leave caring for the donkeys, and take thought for us. And he said unto him, Behold now, there is in this city a man of God, and he is an honorable man. All he saith cometh surely to pass. Now let us go thither, peradventure he can show us our way that we should go. And Saul said to his servant, But behold, if we go, what shall we bring the man? For the bread is spent in our vessels, and there is not a present to bring to the man of God. What have we? And the servant answered Saul again, and said, Behold, I have here at hand the fourth part of a shekel of silver, that will I give to the man of God to tell us our way. Before time in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, thus he spoke, Come, and let us go to the seer. For he that is now called a prophet was before time called a seer. Then said Saul to his servant, Well said, come, let us go. So that they went unto the city where the man of God was, and as they went up the hill to the city, they found the young maidens going out to draw water, and said unto them, Is the seer here? And they answered him and said, He is, behold, he is before you. Make haste now, for he came today to the city, for there is a sacrifice to the people today in the high place. As soon as ye be come into the city, and ye shall straightway find him, before he go up to the high place to eat. For the people will not eat until he come, because he doth bless the sacrifice, and afterward they eat that be bidden. Now therefore get you up, for about this time ye shall find him. And they went up into the city, and when they were come into the city, behold, Samuel came out against them for to go up to the high place. Now God as noun and verb told Samuel in his ear a day before Saul came, saying, Tomorrow about this time I will send thee a man out of the land of Benjamin, and thou shalt anoint him to be captain over my people Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistines. For I have looked upon my people, because their cry is come unto me. And when Samuel saw Saul, God as noun and verbs said unto him, Behold, the man whom I spoke to thee of, this same shall reign over my people. Then Saul drew near to Samuel in the gate and said, Tell me, I pray thee, where the seer's house is. Saul means the same as some other term in the Arabic version of this. It's the same word. There's an ancient Egyptian word too. I don't remember. And Samuel answered Saul and said, I am the seer. Go up before me unto the high place, for ye shall eat with me today and tomorrow. I will let thee go, and I will tell thee all that is in thine heart. And as for thine donkeys that were lost 3 days ago, set not thy mind on them, for they are found. And on whom is all the desire of Israel? Is it not on thee and on all thy father's house? And Saul answered and said, Am I not a Benjamite, of the smallest of the tribes of Israel, and my family the least of all the families of the tribe of Benjamin? Wherefore, then, speakest thou so to me? And Samuel took Saul and his servant, and brought them into the parlor, and made them sit in the chiefest place among them that were bidden, which were about 30 persons. And Samuel said unto the cook, Bring the portion which I gave thee, of which I said unto thee, Set it by thee. And the cook took the shoulder that was upon it, and set it before Saul. And Samuel said, Behold that which is left, set it before thee, and eat. For unto this time hath it been kept for thee, since I said, I have invited the people. So Saul did eat with Samuel that day, and when they were come down from the high place into the city, Samuel communed with Saul upon the top of the house. And they arose early, and it came to pass about the spring of the day. That'd be sunrise, wouldn't it? Early probably means dawn. That Samuel called Saul to the top of the house, saying, Up, that I may send thee away. And Saul arose, and they went out, both of them, he and Samuel abroad. And as they were going down to the end of the city, Samuel said to Saul, Bid the servant pass on before us. And he passed on, but stand thou still a while, that I may show thee the word of God. Then Samuel took a vial of oil, and poured it upon his head, and kissed him, and said, Is it not because God as a noun and verb hath anointed thee to be captain over his inheritance. When thou art departed from me today, then thou shalt find 2 men by Rachel's sepulchre in the border of Benjamite at Zelzah, and they will say unto thee, the donkeys which thou wentest to seek are found, and lo, thy father hath left the care of the donkeys, and sorrowed for you, saying, what shall I do for my son? Then shalt thou go on forward from thence, and thou shalt come to the plain of Tabor, and thou shalt meet thee 3 men going up to God, to Bethel, one carrying 3 kids, animals, and another carrying 3 loaves of bread, and another carrying a bottle of wine. And they will salute thee, and give thee 2 loaves of bread, which thou shalt receive of their hands, and after that thou shalt come to the hill of God, where is the garrison of the Philistines. It's a twist on a word here where he's that in this Polish wallowing, and ten, like the sea beast, kind of a name for Tum-Tum, Tiamat, the female Satan. And it shall come to pass, when thou art come thither to the city, that thou shalt meet a company of prophets coming down from the high place with a psaltery and a tabret and a pipe and a harp before them, and they shall prophesy. And the Spirit of God as a noun and verb will come upon thee, and thou shalt prophesy with them, and shalt be turned into another man. And let it be, when these signs are come unto thee, that thou do as occasion serve thee, for God is with thee. And thou shalt go down before me to Gilgal, and behold, I will come down unto thee to offer burnt offerings, and to sacrifice sacrifices of peace offerings. 7 days shalt thou tarry till I come to thee, and show thee what thou shalt do. And Samuel called the people together unto God as a noun and verb, to Mizpah, and said unto the children of Israel, thus saith God as a noun and verb of Israel, I brought up Israel out of Egypt, and delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of all the kingdoms, and of them that oppressed you. And ye have this day rejected your God, who himself saved you out of all your adversities and your tribulations. And you have said unto him, nay, but set a king over us. Now therefore present yourselves before God as noun and verb by your tribes and by your thousands. And when Samuel had caused all the tribes of Israel to come near, the tribe of Benjamin was taken. When he had caused the tribe of Benjamin to come near by their families, the family of Matra was taken, and Saul the son of Kish was taken, and when they sought him, he could not be found. Therefore they inquired of God as noun and verb further, if the man should yet come thither. And God as noun and verb answered, behold, he hath hid himself among the stuff. And they ran and fetched him thence. And when he stood among the people, he was higher than all the people from his shoulders and upward. And Samuel said to all the people, see ye him, whom God as noun and verb hath chosen, that there is none like him among all the people. And all the people shouted and said, God save the king. Then Samuel told the people the manner of the kingdom, and wrote it in a book, and laid it up before God as a noun and verb. And Samuel sent all the people away, every man to his house. And Saul also went home to Gibeah, and there went with him a band of men whose hearts God had touched. The beginning of the reign of Saul. Then Nahash, the Ammonite, came up and encamped against Yabesh Gilead, and all the men of Yabesh said unto Nahash, make a covenant with us, and we will serve thee. And Nahash, the Ammonite, answered them, on this condition will I make a covenant with you, that I may thrust out all your right eyes and lay it for a reproach upon all Israel. And the elders of Yabesh said unto him, give us 7 days' respite, that we may send messengers unto all the coast of Israel. And then, if there be no man to save us, we will come out to thee. Then came the messengers to Gibeah of Saul, and told the tidings in the ears of the people. And all the people lifted up their voices and wept. And behold, Saul came after the herd out of the field. And Saul said, what aileth the people that they weep? And they told him the tidings of the men of Jabesh. And the Spirit of God as a noun and verb came upon Saul when he heard those tidings. And his anger was kindled greatly, and he took a yoke of oxen, and hewed them in pieces, and sent them throughout all the coast of Israel by the hands of messengers, saying, whosoever cometh not forth after Saul and after Samuel, so shall it be done unto his oxen. And the fear of God as a noun and verb fell upon the people, and they came out with one consent. And when he numbered them in Bezek, the children of Israel were 300,000, and the men of Judah 30,000. And they said unto the messengers that came, thus shall ye say unto the men of Jabesh Gilead, tomorrow, by that time the sun will be hot, ye shall have help. And the messengers came and showed it to the men of Jabesh, and they were glad. Therefore the men of Jabesh said, tomorrow we will come out unto you, and ye shall do with us all that seemeth good unto you. And it was so on the morrow that Saul put the people in 3 companies, and they came into the midst of the host in the morning watch, and slew the Ammonites until the heat of the day. And it came to pass that they which remained were scattered, so that 2 of them were not left together. And all the people went to Gilgal, and there they made Saul king before God as a noun and verb in Gilgal. And there they sacrificed sacrifices of peace offerings before God as noun and verb. According to later in the Bible, you have Jesus ordering the same thing. So this Jesus ending the sacrifices doesn't make sense according to what they have Jesus saying. But peace offerings. And there Saul and all the men of Israel rejoiced greatly. Saul reigned 1 year, and when he had reigned 2 years over Israel, Saul chose him 3,000 men of Israel, whereof 2,000 were with Saul in Michmash and in Mount Bethel, and 1,000 were with Jonathan in Gibeah of Benjamin. And the rest of the people he sent, every man to his tent. And Jonathan smote the garrison of the Philistines that was in Geba. And the Philistines heard of it, and Saul blew the trumpet throughout all the land, saying, let the Hebrews hear. And all Israel heard say that Saul had smitten a garrison of the Philistines, and that Israel also had in abomination with the Philistines. And the people were called together after Saul to Gilgal. And the Philistines gathered themselves together to fight with Israel 30,000 chariots, and 6,000 horsemen, and people as the sand which is on the seashore in multitude. And they came up and pitched in Michmash eastward from Bethaven. When the men of Israel saw that they were in a strait, for the people were distressed, then the people did hide themselves in caves, and in thickets, and in rocks, and in high places, and in pits. And some of the Hebrews went over Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilead. As for Saul, he was yet in Gilgal, and all the people followed him trembling. And the garrison of the Philistines went out to the passage of Michmash. Now it came to pass upon a day that Jonathan, the son of Saul, said unto the young man that bore his armor, Come and let us go over to the Philistines' garrison that is on the other side. But he told not his father. And Jonathan said to the young man that bore his armor, Come and let us go over to the garrison of these uncircumcised. Were they running around naked? It may be that God as noun and verb will work for us, for there is no restraint to God as noun and verb, save by many or by few. Oh, to save by many or by few. Okay, yeah. Can't hold back God from doing what he wants, regardless of your number. And his armor bearer said unto him, Do all that is in thine heart, turn thee, behold, I am with thee according to thy heart. Then said Jonathan, Behold, we will pass over unto these men, and we will discover ourselves unto them. If they say thus unto us, Tarry until we come to you, then we will stand still in our place, and will not go up unto them. But if they say thus, Come up unto us, then we will go up. For God as noun and verb hath delivered them into our hand, and this shall be a sign unto us. And both of them discovered themselves unto the garrison of the Philistines. And the Philistines said, Behold, the Hebrews come forth out of the holes where they had hid themselves. And the men of the garrison answered Jonathan, there's no J's, and his armor bearer had said, Come up to us, and we will show you a thing. And Jonathan said unto his armor bearer, Come up after me, for God as noun and verb hath delivered them into the hand of Israel. And Jonathan climbed up upon his hands and upon his feet, and his armor bearer after him. And they fell before Jonathan, and his armor bearer slew after him. And that first slaughter which Jonathan and his armor bearer had made was about 20 men, within, as it were, half an acre of land, which a yoke of oxen might plough. And there was trembling in the host, in the field, and among all the people, the garrison and the spoilers. They also trembled, and the earth quaked, so that it was a very great trembling. And the watchmen of Saul and Gibeah, Benjamin, looked up, and behold, the multitude melted away, and they went on beating down one another. Then said Saul unto the people that were with him, Number now, and let us see who is gone from us. And when they had numbered, behold, Jonathan and his armor bearer were not there. And Saul and all the people that were with him assembled themselves, and they came to battle. And behold, every man's sword was against his fellow. And there was a very great discomfiture. Moreover, the Hebrews that were with the Philistines before that time went up with them into the camp of the country round about. Even they also turned to be with the Israelites that were with Saul and Jonathan. Likewise, all the men of Israel which had hid themselves in Mount Ephraim, when they heard the Philistines fled, even they also followed hard after them in the battle. So God has Noun and Verb saved Israel that day, and the battle passed over unto Bethaven. Beit Aun. And the men of Israel were distressed that day, for Saul had adjured the people, saying, Cursed be the man that eateth any food until evening, that I may be avenged on mine enemies. So none of the people tasted any food. And all they of the land came to a wood, and there was honey upon the ground. And when the people were come into the wood, behold, the honey dropped. But no man put his hand to his mouth, for the people feared the oath. But Jonathan heard not, when his father charged the people with the oath. Wherefore he put forth the end of the rod that was in his hand, and dipped it in an honeycomb, and put his hand to his mouth, and his eyes were enlightened. Then answered one of the people and said, Thy father straitly charged the people with an oath, saying, Cursed be the man that eateth any food this day. And the people were faint. Then said Jonathan, My father hath troubled the land. See, I pray you, how mine eyes have been enlightened, because I tasted a little of this honey. How much more, if haply the people had eaten freely today of the spoil of their enemies, which they found? For had there not been now a much greater slaughter among the Philistines? There is quite the enlightenment in stepping yourself away from the conservative things and saying, well, what is really required now, Am I being forbidden something that's just okay? I'm not saying go off and break the law of the land and be arrested or anything, but you know what I mean. And they smote the Philistines that day from Michmash to Ealon. And the people were very faint, and the people flew upon the spoil, and took sheep and oxen and calves, and slew them on the ground, and the people did eat them with the blood, which, something they were supposed to let the blood drain out, but or slaughter them in a way that they bled better. Both, really. Then they told Saul, saying, Behold, the people sin against God as noun and verb, in that they eat with the blood. And he said, Ye have transgressed. Roll a great stone unto me this day. And Saul said, Disperse yourselves among the people, and say unto them, Bring me hither every man his ox, and every man his sheep, and slay them here, and eat, and sin not against God as a noun and verb, in eating with the blood. And all the people brought every man his ox with him that night, and slew them there. And Saul built an altar unto God as a noun and verb. The same was the first altar that he built unto God as a noun and verb. And Saul said, Let us go down after the Philistines by night, and spoil them until the morning light, and let us not leave a man of them. And they said, Do whatsoever seemeth good unto thee. Then said the priest, Let us draw near hither unto God. And Saul asked counsel of God, Shall I go down after the Philistines? Wilt thou deliver them into the hand of Israel? But he answered him not that day. And Saul said, Draw ye near hither, all the chief of the people, all the chiefs of the people, and know and see wherein this sin hath been this day, For as God is noun and verb liveth, which saveth Israel, though it be in Jonathan my son, he shall surely die. But there was not a man among all the people that answered him. And then he said unto all Israel, Be ye on the one side, I and Jonathan my son will be on the other side. And the people said unto Saul, Do what seemeth good unto thee. Therefore Saul said, Unto God is a noun and verb, God of Israel, give a perfect lot. And Saul and Jonathan were taken, but the people escaped. And Saul said, Cast lots between me and Jonathan my son. And Jonathan was taken. Then Saul said to Jonathan, Tell me what thou hast done. And Jonathan told him and said, I did but taste a little honey with the end of the rod that was in mine hand, and lo, I must die. And Saul answered, God do so and more also, for thou shalt surely die, Jonathan. And the people said unto Saul, Shall Jonathan die, who hath wrought this great salvation in Israel? God forbid. As God is noun and verb liveth, there shall not one hair of his head fall to the ground, for he hath wrought with God this day. So the people rescued Jonathan, that he died not. Then Saul went up from following the Philistines, and the Philistines went to their own place, and Saul took the kingdom over Israel and fought against all his enemies on every side, against Moab, and against the children of Ammon, against Edom, against the kings of Zobah, against the Philistines, and whithersoever he turned himself, he vexed them. And he gathered a host, and smote the Amalekites, and delivered Israel out of the hands of them that spoiled them. Now the sons of Saul were Jonathan and Echui, Amokishua, and the names of the two daughters were these: the names of the firstborn, Merab, and the name of the younger, Michal. And the names of Saul's wife, and the name of Saul's wife was Ahinoam, the daughter of Ahimaaz, and the name of the captain of his host was Abner, the son of Ner, Saul's uncle. And Kish was the father of Saul, and Ner, the father of Abner, was the son of Abiel. And there was sore war against the Philistines all the days of Saul. And when Saul saw any strong man or any valiant man, he took him unto him.